How many people know it's easy to recognize God's presence when everything's good? Everything goes great. But what happens in our tough times? What happens when the brokenness of this world meets the reality of our faith? We're not living in Babylon today, geographically, but we are living in Babylon spiritually. Most of us won't be carried off into exile by a foreign empire. I hope all of us. But every one of us wakes up every day in a culture that is trying to tell us who we are, trying to tell us what we value, trying to tell us what success looks like, what happiness looks like, who deserves our attention and what deserves our worship. That's Babylon, not a place, but a competing kingdom. Competing for our attention, competing for our allegiance, competing for our time, our love, our worship. We're not going to explore the life of Daniel in chapter 1, but instead we're going to look to these 3 verses, 3 small moments where it says in scripture that God gave. It's almost silent in chapter 1. The dominating story is about vegetables and the king and dreams and the history and Daniel, but there is this quiet, steady presence of God. That's the encouragement of point 1. Number 1, God gave his people over. Why would God do that? And you're probably thinking, Josh, you're not really selling this whole thing to me. Why would God give his people over to the enemy? Well, he gave them an option. But he said that if you turn from me, if you reject me, then I will hand you over in exile. And so it wasn't great, and I'm sure God's people would have preferred other options, but God was actually being faithful to his promise. Number 2, God gave Daniel favor. This one's a little bit more encouraging. It's the silent, subtle presence of God. Now, God had given, or in other words, God gave the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. God gave Daniel favor with his captors. Let's unpack this because the battle wasn't over vegetables. The battle was over worship. The meal wasn't the test. It was Daniel's allegiance that was the test. And yes, Daniel decided, and that opened the door, but it was God's grace that made a way. What we're talking about here is human responsibility, obedience, and God's divine grace. And the two are not mutually exclusive. They're meant to come together. Because when they don't, we look silly. We look like hypocritical Christians. Do you know what I'm talking about? God's grace, his power, his design for our lives doesn't replace our responsibility and the need for obedience. And finally, God gave Daniel wisdom. God gave him wisdom and his friends. He gave him the special ability to interpret dreams and visions. I think this is where people miss something in the story of Daniel. It's not the people out there that we're meant to be scared of. We're not to read Daniel and go, yeah, the world is corrupt. It is the way of the world, the culture of the world. People are not the enemy. The way, the thinking, the culture of this world is the enemy. See, Daniel, he didn't reject Babylon's education. He rejected Babylon's identity. And that's a big difference. See, Christians, we shouldn't be afraid as followers of Jesus, of politics, of education, of people who disagree with us, of science, of culture, of difficult questions, of education or technology, because Daniel wasn't afraid of those things. Now, Christians shouldn't isolate from culture. Christians are called to influence culture. The problem isn't Babylon around us. The problem is when Babylon gets inside of us. God, he prepares us to influence the world, not to run from it. After all, he said that you are the light of the world. God is faithful, God is present, and God empowers. Daniel, he serves Babylon. He works for Babylon. He blesses Babylon, but he never becomes Babylon because Daniel discovered something that changed everything.